Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That is Dr. Matt Woolley. You're fidgeting in your chair. We haven't even started the program.
We need new chairs.
KSL needs to buy new chairs.
Seriously, like this is borderline torturous.
Well, Josh is gonna send that to the boss.
It won't do any good.
You're usually late, and so normally I've got the bad seat.
No, you just don't know what time I'm supposed to be here.
Normally I've got the bad seat, and I switch you. And I told our guest Catlin, I go, watch, Dr. Matt's gonna come in and sit on this chair, and he's gonna be mad. Yeah. Sure enough, you sat on it.
They're horrible.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah.
But we've got a great show for you today. I'm back. Dr. Matt's here. So
you were golfing, right?
I wasn't golfing. I was actually in a sales boot camp in Fort Worth, Texas.
All of that sounds terrible to me.
It was actually pretty cool.
A sales boot camp in Texas. None of that sounds good to me.
We've left on a Wednesday. We got back on a Thursday. We flew into Fort Worth, went straight to the conference room, sat there for 4 hours, learned how to talk to people, learned how to ask for the deal. I learned a lot of great information. This is part of my title company that I work for.
Did they really just teach you how to manipulate people?
No, it's not about manipulating. It's about building a relationship, Dr. Matt.
That sounds manipulative.
No, it's about building a relationship and being able to ask for the deal. And so I learned a lot of great stuff.
I will say this. I do enjoy working with a salesperson who honestly wants to just help me find what I need.
Yes.
And isn't pressuring me. But there are certain stores in Utah I will not shop in anymore because they are the opposite. I won't bring up any names, like R.C. Woolley or anything like that.
We're gonna have to cut that.
Okay.
But that's what
I don't like the high pressure sales. But I've had a few people like one of the cars I bought not too long ago. It was awesome because they were just wanting to help me know what I needed and help me find the right fit, and I really appreciated it. So if that's what you learned at the boot camp, that's awesome.
That's what we learned. And then so there was something interesting that happened because normally when you go away on a sales boot camp with a bunch of salespeople.
Is that a normal thing you do? When you normally go away? You do that a lot?
No, but when you do that,
okay.
Usually what happens afterwards is everybody congregates down by the bar.
Yes.
And then they go out.
Out after.
Yeah. And so I was a little bit nervous, a little apprehensive about what was going to go on. This is my first trip with all these guys, and we go
Do you know them very well?
I knew two of them. Two of them were for our state, and then there was from Oklahoma, Fort Worth, Texas.
Oh, so this is like...
There was people from all over the country there.
Right.
And so we go there, and then we wrap up. They go, okay, hey, we'll meet down at the bar for happy hour, because other states have happy hour, and that's where drinks are half price.
Is that not a thing in Utah?
No, you can't have happy hour in Utah.
What?
You
That's a law?
Yeah, it's a law. You can't have discounted drinks.
Really?
Yeah, because it promotes drinking. That. Yeah, no, you can't.
Oh.
If you've noticed, there's no bars in Utah that have happy hour.
Could you do an unhappy hour and charge twice as much?
It's every day.
That's every day.
It's unhappy hour.
I want to experiment with that law.
And so they go happy hour, and then we'll go to dinner. And so I go down there, and everybody's drinking, and not everybody, but majority of people are. And the waitress comes up, and she goes, hey, can I get you something to drink? And I go, no. And she goes, are you sure? And I go, well, if I drink now, you're going to have to kick me out. And she laughed, and I went, I'm serious. And then I had to explain to everybody in there. I said, hey, I'm in recovery. I'm coming up on 4 years, and here's all the story. And it kind of broke the ice, and then nobody pushed it after that. But it was a little bit weird because I'd made a joke in the conference room about me being an alcoholic, and most people just laughed and thought I was just joking.
Just joking, yeah.
But I was serious.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would love to, but I'm an alcoholic. And then everybody laughed, and I went, okay. And I just let it go. Yeah. And then when I got there, and I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm an alcoholic. I can't drink.
But that's your style to handle tense moments, is use humor, right?
Yeah. And so then after the happy hour, we went to dinner, and I got stuck next to this lady who I enjoyed our conversation with. And we were talking about me being an alcoholic. And then inevitably, whenever you're talking to somebody about your troubles and what you've gone through as an alcoholic or a person in recovery, they always know somebody or they know a story, and they want to find out more information. And that's what this podcast is about, was opening up a conversation about addiction, more importantly about recovery. And so we just had a nice conversation about recovery, and she was talking about her brother's uncle or, something like that. And it was wonderful. And so that was my first trip in 4 years, going out with a bunch of people who wanted to do work in the day and party at night.
Now, did they party pretty hard?
No,
group?
it was weird because I was walking back with a guy from Utah who doesn't drink because he's LDS. He was like, I've never seen a conference like this end at 9:00.
Oh, okay.
And we just
so they weren't that rowdy of a crowd.
No, it wasn't that rowdy. But coming up in October, we're going back out to Austin.
Okay.
And Austin City Limits is going on at the time.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so it's going to be a little bit crazier.
The same group of people going out there?
But even more.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of cool.
Well, let me ask you this, though. So I sometimes have people ask me, like, Casey always sounds so positive and upbeat about, his recovery, but does he ever really struggle? So I'll let you answer that. I mean, is it ever a dark moment or a temptation? Especially, I mean, it sounds like this group, most of them didn't even really know you. I think it's different. You're a public figure here. If you were out, drinking on Main Street, you'd be recognized. But out there, maybe,
people ask me that all the time. And to be honest with you, I don't have the temptation. I don't feel like that's something that I want to do or that I need to do it. As a matter of fact, I look at it and I just go, why would you do that? Do you not remember the last 4 years and all you've gone through to get where you are and all the blessings that recovery has given you? Why would you waste it for one beer? And that's where the trick is. It wouldn't be for one beer because that's not how I work. One beer is not good enough for me.
You're all or nothing.
Yeah. And so, no.
So that's a reframe. So I thought I could get you to give a reframe. So thanks for doing that. And that's in cognitive psychology. We think about something in one way, and then we might ask ourselves, okay, but what's a different way I could think about this? And so what you sort of just modeled there was the idea is like, well, I guess I could have a drink, but I know that's going to turn into a bunch. But the reframe is a different way to think about that is it's going to lead me to losing all of this that I've built up and the person that I've become, and it's not worth it. So in that moment, you can reframe yourself out of a tempting moment. Now, for you, I don't think you've had that real strong temptation, but most people do. Most people who are going through recovery will have low times where they feel like maybe I should go back to my DOC. Maybe that would help me have a little relief right now.
But I think the thing that made me such a good addict, if there's such a thing, also makes me such a good person in recovery, and it's my all or nothing mentality.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. Now, a little insight. We record these podcasts on Thursday.
True.
In 3 days will be my 4-year anniversary.
All right. Woo!
Of when I lost everything, or so I thought.
Yeah.
I really thought I had lost everything. But in reality, I found everything that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a 4-year process of me doing that. And I've worked hard. I've had good days. I've had bad days. But in the 4 years since I quit drinking, I've been blessed with so many wonderful opportunities. I've been able to appreciate authentic interactions with people in the public, with my kids, with my girlfriend, with my ex-wife, with my family, which I would have never had that opportunity had I kept drinking. My life was going down, and it was going down fast. The reality is because of that accident, this could be my 4th year in prison.
Yeah, I mean, that is one way
and looking at maybe 6 more, I don't know what it would have been. Had I killed somebody, I don't know where I would be. And so the reality is the day I thought I lost everything was the day I found everything that matters to me.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. I'm proud of you. I know that it was a big struggle for you up until that point, but you did that all or nothing shift in a positive way. And that, you're right, that kind of a personality, we see it here in the studio almost every week with somebody who was all in and now they're all out.
We've had people in here who didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, but yet found a way to get $400 to keep their habit going a day.
They
lived in boxes behind dumpsters, but somehow managed to find $500 a day for their heroin habit.
No, I've done the math so many times. I'm like, I couldn't afford a habit like that. I'd be living. I guess that's why they are homeless a lot of the time, right? Is because everything you can scrape together just goes to feeding your addiction.
And it's that all or nothing mentality. Right, and so they go for it. And so if there's a will, there's a way. And addicts use that as a way to stay sick, and to say dope sick or get their fix. Mm-hmm. But that same can apply for your recovery. If there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And all the difference is whether you want to channel your energy for good or for bad. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I can't boil it down to every addict of why they do what they do. But the reality is if you don't choose to get better, you won't.
The all or nothing mentality, when applied in the right direction, works miracles. It totally changes lives. And I think that's what you're saying. The last 4 years, your life has become everything you hoped it would be.
Everything that I thought it was before the accident. I mean,
so were you delusional, do you think? Do you think that's a type of delusional thinking? You thought things were wonderful when they really weren't? Delusional
and naive. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Naive that I thought this is what it meant. I was checking all the boxes. I was doing all this, and it was empty. It was empty. It was an empty life.
It was an adult life. Yeah. You hadn't had a long-term sobriety at any point in your adult life, so you didn't know anything different.
Never had long-term sobriety.
Yeah.
Maybe had 3 months at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But never like this. I never knew who I was. I never knew who I wanted. I didn't really have a purpose or a mission that I really believed in. I was just faking it as long as I could to figure, and I didn't get a chance to figure out who I was.
And I think we buy a certain line of reasoning that, like, if you have the job, if you're checking all the boxes, like you said, then that is what life is supposed to be. But I think a lot of people get there and they go, really? I mean, like I'm supposed to be happy. I don't feel as happy. And so that encourages more use.
100%. So what I'm saying now is that everything that's in my life is in my life for a purpose. It makes sense to me, and it gives me something that makes me whole. And that's what I really strive for on a day-to-day basis is how can I be of service? How can I make my kids proud? And how can I keep this going? That's pretty much my rules for life.
Do you feel like you have that conversation with yourself on the daily?
My ego wants to tell you yes.
Yeah.
But the truth is, not every day.
No.
But I try to. I try to ground myself and remind myself how things are going and where they've been and who I want to be. And
let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. This just popped into my head because I had a conversation earlier in the week with somebody who is not quite as far into sobriety as you, but that far enough. And he was telling me he can tell that he thinks more clearly now. Like he feels like his ability to like logically work through problems, come to solutions. Like he can actually feel his brain working more efficiently. Have you experienced that?
100%. Back in the days, my mind was cloudy. It was cloudy a lot of the time. And a lot of stuff that I relied on was stuff that I'd been using for years and years and years. It was a bag of tricks that I knew how to get to. I remember when I was golfing with my dad or my buddies and we were out there drinking, about on the 10th or 11th hole, I would start telling jokes and they'd be like, bro, you've been doing this for 12 years, man. You got to get some new stuff. You know,
they were the same golf jokes all the time.
The same golf jokes or the same stuff. And so I would have to find new people that I could use those on because my head wasn't clearly. I wasn't thinking clearly.
I love that. Instead of getting new jokes, you've
found new people. Yeah. It's like, oh, have you heard this joke? Yeah. Okay, then I'll find someone out. Yeah. And when a new person would come in, I would get them first. And my friends would be like, oh, here we go again. Same old show.
Yeah. But I think that's cool. I mean, I think there's all the social benefit, but I think people forget, whether it's alcohol or other drugs, you're poisoning your brain and you're not allowing it to work at its full capacity. And, it was just a cool experience as a therapist to have this person describe to me, they were sharing an epiphany. It was a real moment of clarity for them that they could think on a higher level and problem solve on a higher level. And he was so happy about it. He was just really just happy to know that he could be a better version of himself. And I think that was a beautiful thing. I appreciate, in my job, having people share those things with me.
Over the 4 years of my recovery, I've had more than a dozen times where I've had those moments of clarity where I went, yes. It's just a reaffirmation of that I'm doing the right thing. Because it was just like, okay, yes, now this makes sense. Or if something went bad, it didn't go really bad because I didn't have alcohol there to compound it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's all alcohol ever did was compound every one of my problems.
For sure.
And so Hey, we've got a great show for you today. We're really excited because we're talking to the first person who's ever been on this podcast who says their DOC is marijuana.
First one.
And we've had a lot of people where marijuana has been their introduction into substance abuse.
That's very common.
And you'll also hear people all the time who go, you can't get addicted to marijuana, man. Marijuana's not addictable.
If
Is that a word? Is that a word?
No, but that was so perfect of somebody that would say that. You threw in man and you made up a word. That is just fantastic.
I love it.
You get the part.
All right. Bro. Addictable is not a word?
It's going to be from now on.
Cool.
I'm going to use it.
But her name is Catlin Lorito. It's like Dorito with an L.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
We've got a lot to talk to you about.
I think she has the best smile of anyone we've had on the show in a long time.
And what's amazing is you're going to go to our Facebook page and we're going to show you her intake photo when she entered Pinnacle Recovery to get help with marijuana. We're going to find out more about her story. Stick around. You're listening to Project Recovery. Welcome back to Project Recovery, the podcast that's addictable. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist. He's also the one that corrects me when I get out of line.
I'm not sure that's out of. I think we're creating a new phrase.
I love it. Our guest today is Catlin. Don't say it, Caitlin. Lorito.
Yes, Lorito.
All right. So now we teased a little bit before we took a break that you're the first person ever to be on this podcast whose DOC, which means drug of choice, is marijuana.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
I mean, I guess so. I've heard since I've gotten out of treatment, I've heard of more people going in to the same treatment center for the same reasons.
But we're going to find out more about that in just a second. But where does the story of Catlin begin?
So I was born in California and raised there pretty much until I was 9. And my parents got divorced when I was young. And I guess I moved out here when I was 9, and then I was living with my mom and my stepdad and my 2 half-siblings, and was traveling back and forth every other weekend to spend the weekend with my dad.
In California?
Right.
Every other weekend. Wow, that's a long... I mean, I assume you flew. You didn't drive that, did you?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, so flying unaccompanied minor.
What was that like for you as a kid? Was that scary or was it fun?
I think as a kid, I had a lot of fun with it because it was kind of something
kind of
that
cool
unprecedented, or it was cool. I didn't have a lot of friends that were doing the same thing, and I guess
You're the only third grader with frequent flyer miles.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Dr. Matt's going to want to know, was the divorce a bad divorce? Was it a good divorce? How did you take the divorce?
So they divorced before I could even remember. I think it was. I think my mom said it was around 2. I was 2 years old, and they don't get along, or they've never really gotten along. I think that it was nice having my stepdad as kind of like a buffer in between those two communicating. Or
did he take that role pretty well? Like sometimes a step parent does play a nice buffer role to be able to communicate between two parents that struggle.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of animosity between them, more so. I don't want to throw under the bus, but from my mom's side, and she kind of she uses humor as a way to kind of mask that a little bit. But
I understand that.
Casey knows a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it kind of carried on into my anger issues, because when you're told that you're just like your dad.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah. Hey, parents listening, note to self, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, because it's like, even if you're kidding, that's still half of who I am.
Well, so Freud talked about jokes, and he got a few things right. One of the things he profiled for a while were jokes, but those aren't really jokes, are they? Like it sounds humorous and it's sort of, sold as a joke. But when you listen to what the person's saying, it's like it's biting, right? So there's a grating undertone to what's
It's like
being
the people
said.
who go, I don't want to be racist, but, well, then do not finish that sentence.
Just be done,
do not
right?
finish that sentence. It's like they're giving you like an out, and this is, but in reality, you go, no, it's
they're justifying their racism in that case. But yeah, that's tough as a kid because children need to be treated as individuals and not negatively compared to like a ex-spouse or something. So that was probably tough. Yeah.
But Catlin, you finally ended up living in Park City, Utah.
Park City, yeah. So I went to school. Out there from 4th grade till at 6th grade, and then I spent a year in California with my dad, and that was due to just my mom and I clashing, and that's when I think a lot of the depression, which for me, my depression manifested in anger more than anything else. It wasn't like I was...
I'm glad you bring that up because that is a really common misconception that depression is, sadness, stay in bed, low energy. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's pretty easy to show visually. So that's what makes it into the TV shows and the movies when we want to show someone's depressed. Mm-hmm. The reality is young people, and especially men, but men of all ages, but especially young people, irritability and anger and sort of an agitated energy are really common manifestations of depression.
Yeah, I definitely experienced all of those things as a kid. I was very angsty, angry at the world.
And so you decided, or maybe your parents decided, it's time for a change and send you back to
Yeah, it was one of those
California.
things where it was like, I'm just going to go live with Dad. I want to live with Dad. And she's like, you know what? I've heard enough of this. You're going to go live with your dad for a year. And that, unfortunately, it didn't work out. It was, I love my dad. I'm very close with my dad. And he was doing his best as a single parent, trying to manage a business that he had started while also having a kid who's starting at a new school, a new community, trying to make new friends. And
was that junior high? You just
junior high.
So that's a big switch, leaving your community and then going to California and starting junior high and all the stuff that goes along with being in junior high. That's a stressful time. And I would say, in retrospect, it's easy to criticize. So this isn't a criticism, but a lot of parents do what your parents did. Instead of trying to understand and address the underlying issues of why you're angry, it's more like, well, we'll just move you to another house.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we hope those big changes make a difference, but they don't usually. How did your anger and depression go?
I think that it was more so just a lot of isolation and sadness during that year because I just felt alone. I didn't have, I had a couple friends here and there, but it was so different going from being in a space where I've known all the kids since 4th grade. We've gone through every grade together and
small town comparatively, right?
To Orange County, and it's...
What part of Orange County?
We were right by Coto de Caza.
Okay. When I was a kid, I lived in Fullerton.
Okay.
So the Orange County can be a little crazy.
I can imagine. But you only lasted a year there. You said you were very angsty, and eventually it led to you coming back to Park City, Utah.
Mm-hmm. So I came back here. I was going into 8th grade. So I did 8th grade and 9th grade, and then you go into the high school.
So at any point, your angsty preteens and teen years, did you experiment with alcohol or drugs?
Yes. So I was first introduced to pot. I think it started with pot, and then just drinking here and there. But I really fell in love with weed when I was in high school. And I think it was the whole process of it, rolling it, smoking it, and finding it and hiding it. It was the whole
ritual.
Yeah, the ritual of it that I really liked. And
plus, it's a rebellion, right? Like, I could just tell by the way you're looking when you're talking about that. It was sort of like, oh, this is my secret thing.
Yeah, this is like my
right,
thing.
And
I
can rebel. Mm-hmm. And so many teenagers. I mean, that's actually one of the arguments for decriminalizing things is that it takes away that fun, for lack of a better term, of finding it and being being a sneaky kid.
Yeah.
Did you ever get in trouble for it with the cops or high school or anything?
No, I didn't. I think there was always the suspicion among like the teachers and the staff at the high school, but that was mostly because I was hanging out with the other stoner kids, and
You could have been a little paranoid.
could have been paranoid. It could have been a side effect of the marijuana.
I mean, we're talking
use.
about Park City, so I think she wasn't the only kid in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't end up on a podcast because you never get caught. Something usually seems to have to go awry.
Right. So I would say my senior year of high school and then going into my first couple of years in college, I really started partying, where it was, and I was also, I left this out, but I was prescribed Adderall in high school. That was something that I feel like I completely manipulated my way into getting that prescription, and I was partying with
So somebody
alcohol,
told you you had
Adderall.
ADHD, attention problems.
Someone gave me an Adderall,
And
and I
if
was
you
like,
say you have ADHD, they'll
you
give
can go
more.
get it.
That's what I'm wondering.
Someone I tried it from a friend, and I was like, this is it. Like, I'm going to be able to. I'm basically a certified genius when I'm on this drug, and that's what everyone thinks, right? And so that just allowed me. That really opened the door for me to party longer, harder, and.
Were you involved in other things in high school? High school is kind of a one of the psychological developmental tasks is affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we connect with certain people during those teenage years, or groups, or ideas.
Are you a jock? Are you a member of the Hellfire Club? Are you
Right.
on
Yeah.
the chess
Think
guild?
Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Which, you go back to that movie Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Each one of those people in there represented a different group in
on
high
purpose,
school. On purpose,
right? So,
yeah.
so John Hughes wrote that movie on purpose to highlight each of the cliques, because those were the personal identities, immature personal identities of the typical teenagers, right? And so that's such a classic movie because that's what we all go through.
Mm-hmm.
My question is,
What table would you be sitting at?
Yeah, what table would you be sitting at? And just tell us a little bit about that.
So I would probably be sitting with the guy who wears leather.
John Bender.
It was kind of, so I was always good in school. I kept my grades up. I did all my homework on my own. I managed that for the most part.
Part
And
of your
then-
identity was being a good student.
Right. But on the other side of that, it was running with the boys and smoking as much as they're smoking. It's the whole that
A little competitiveness, want
right.
to keep up with the.
I want to keep up and
be tough.
Yeah, I would consider myself a stoner.
So
in high school.
the parking lot crowd, the stoner crowd, that was more your group. You weren't in the orchestra or that kind of stuff.
I didn't. Okay, so I got a job when I was 14, and so I worked consistently from that point, basically until now. I've always been employed.
What was
somewhere.
your high school first job when you were 14?
I worked at a Native American trading post store on Main Street, which was awesome and
Main
fun.
Street, Park City, yeah.
Yeah, meeting a lot of different walks
Do you have
of life.
celebrities
up
come in and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff? Yeah.
So you're prescribed Adderall. You're hanging out with the parking lot crew. You're getting good grades, but you're smoking more marijuana than you
Yeah.
probably should.
Well, it sounds a little bit like you, Casey, where like, you know, if I'm going to outdrink you or I'm going to outsmoke, like it was competitive, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that was your sport.
And the drinking really started taking a turn for the worst. It wasn't drinking for fun anymore. It was drinking to get obliterated. And I was that person who would black out, start fights, end up crying at the end of the night. And the Adderall made it so that I could just continue to consume instead of, whereas someone who wasn't on it, they would probably be sick and be
Pass
done
out or die.
And be done for the night. And I would just keep going, and it would end in chaos every single time. Every time.
So at that point, does anybody in your family or your circle of friends go, "Hey, Catlin, you might have a problem here"?
So in college, my first year of college, I fell into a group of girls, and they partied hard too, and they they pulled me aside and they suggested that I don't drink hard liquor anymore, that I should switch to beer, which is something that's talked about in the big book, where it's like you start substituting one thing to see if, well, maybe if I drink this way, I won't black out. Or maybe if I tried this brand, I won't black out. And it was like inevitable.
So the group of girls that party hard had to pull you aside and tell you to dial it back a little.
Right.
But the alcoholic brain, it's weird because people will tell you that it's like, well, I only drink clear liquor, or I only drink brown liquor.
There's all sorts of myths and
you'll see somebody who's like, well, I'm fine until the tequila comes out, and then I just change personalities. You know?
Right.
But it's just the justification, the rationalization of how you can still keep drinking without having those kind of consequences.
Yeah.
So did you switch to beer?
I did for a little bit, but it was just, I mean, it didn't matter. It's just, I'm just going to drink more beer until I feel the exact same.
Liquor is quicker, right?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah. So I think I moved away from hanging out with those friends, and I was kind of just trying to find my people, and I turned 21, and a month after I turned 21, I got a DUI.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I wrecked my car. I crashed into another car right downtown. And there was a family in the car, and thankfully no one was hurt, but that should have been the wake-up call. You like looking back on it retrospectively, it's like that could have been the point where I was, coming to terms with the fact that, hey, I might have an issue with substances.
Or you could have been in prison.
Or I could have been in prison.
Why do you think, looking back, that wasn't the wake-up call that it could have been?
I think that it was almost an excuse to go harder for me, which is, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. But now it was like, now I don't have a car, so I can drink as much as I want in the vicinity of like the walking distance from my house, because I was living right downtown. And so I had the liquor store, was like a couple blocks away. I had all the bars downtown were, same thing, couple blocks away. And I was just...
I wonder if part of it was your competitive nature, because you're right. It doesn't make any rational sense on the surface level that you would go harder after that. But I think sometimes, because I've heard this before, people they're like, I made a mistake, but I can drink maybe not harder, but better. Like I can be a better drinker. Yeah. Like you can't, that I'm not going to go out with that as a failure, because I can overcome this instead of overcoming it by going into sobriety. It's overcome it as in being a better drinker. I wonder if that was part of the mindset, because that competitive addict nature is kind of like, I'm not going to lose.
Right. And it also just, my self-esteem was shot. And I thought that was the end of my life, basically. Like, I just threw it all away in one night. Now I'm someone with a DUI. I always looked at people with DUIs like, how could you? And that's the worst thing you could possibly do. And I ended up being that person.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
It's the most selfish thing you can do.
It definitely is, for sure.
But you're right in the sense that we judge other people, right? Like I sure, when I was a younger person and had less world experience, I looked at people that were homeless and thought terrible things about them.
Get a job.
Very judgmental things about them. Same thing with a DUI. That's sort of an indication of, oh, your life's out of control. You can't handle life. But then once you become a person who's homeless, or you become a person who has a DUI, or you get fired because of your drinking, those sorts of things, all of a sudden you realize, oh, this happens to me. This could happen to anybody.
Right.
It does change your mindset.
Yeah.
And changing mindsets is what we're talking about here with Catlin here on Project Recovery. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. Casey Scott, that's Dr. Matt Woolley. Our guest today is Catlin, and she's talking about her early years of substance abuse, where you got a DUI, and instead of that being your rock bottom, you took it as a challenge and kind of turned up the partying even more.
It was like all the seatbelt came off. I just was like...
Off to the races.
Off to the races, yeah.
Well, I see that sort of alcoholic logic. Well, I don't have a car now.
Yeah.
So I can't, so I might as well just drink as much as I want.
And I'm stuck downtown, and anywhere I turn, there's a bar, a liquor store, and those seem to be the only fun things to do.
Exactly.
And how did you stay in college? Were you able to, no?
No.
Tell us
so
what happened there.
This is the that was the point. So I got the DUI. I was going to Westminster, and the public transportation goes right there. And when you're a student, you get free public transport. So I could have easily
no
kept
excuse
going.
not to go.
Right. And I only had a year left. I did all 3 years, and I did pretty well. And then what initiated me dropping out was the embarrassment of public transportation. In my head, I thought that people were going to see me taking the bus to school, and they were going to know that she got a DUI and she screwed up her life, and now these are the consequences. And for some reason, that I just couldn't handle that. It was so shameful in my head. I don't know.
No,
I think yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking back on it now, you can maybe say, "Gosh, I should have just been tough and gone." But when you're in the middle of shame is such a horrible experience, and it is so depressing of your positive behaviors. Like, it just destroys the sense of who you are. So I could definitely see how the shame of that, or the fear that you'd be shamed by others, would stop you.
So how did you tell your parents you weren't going to school?
I think I phrased it in a way that was like, I'm just going to I need a break.
I'll take a year off.
Yeah.
I'm going to get myself clean.
It's been like 7 years.
I'm going to figure some things out.
Yeah.
And what did you do with that year?
I partied, and I was working at the comedy club downtown. And that's, when you're in a club environment, it's like you get off work and the first thing you do is you go to the nearest bar and just start slamming shots. And that was my life for a year. And then I got into a relationship, and it was a 6-year-long relationship. And so that was basically my life, was just working the day job at the desk job. And then at night I would go to the comedy club downtown, and throughout all of that, I'm smoking during the day, wake up, smoke, go to work, get off, smoke, go to my other job, get off work from there, drink. And
so at what point would you say your DOC became weed? Because it sounds like up to this point in your story, alcohol's kind of caused you the most trouble. But at what point did marijuana start to become like your main drug of choice?
I would say when COVID hit, it really just shook everything up. The club closed. I wasn't going into work anymore. I was working from home. So it was just the easiest access thing. I mean, I had my work desk, and right around the corner I had my bong. And so it was just right there. And alcohol wasn't fun for me anymore. I was getting off of work and I was just taking shots. It wasn't like I was like, I'm going to relax and have a beer. It was just, I'm going to take 3 shots and sit here and wait. And then I'm going to smoke and get, crossfaded, as they say, and just sit in my house and do nothing. And so that's what I did.
I think that is such one of the tragedies of COVID, other than COVID itself.
I get it.
Is that it encouraged so much substance abuse.
And we're starting to see the outside of that. You know what I mean?
The effects of that. So many people got into the habit of doing exactly what you're describing. Is they're home, and 5 o'clock becomes 3 o'clock, becomes noon, and people figured out pretty quickly, I can sort of do this job and be drunk or be high. Yep. And
I've got nowhere to go.
The boredom, the isolation, and the depression that comes from that. People tried to alleviate that with substances, mostly alcohol and marijuana. You know?
So you switched from mostly drinking to mostly smoking.
Yeah.
And
I think that was really caused by the anxiety that I started experiencing.
Was the anxiety caused by COVID and the unknown and the world's kind of changing and stopping? Or were you getting anxiety from the drinking?
I don't know. And Dr. Heather from Pinnacle would say it was the marijuana. Long-term marijuana use, sometimes it happens where it just has this switch where all the things it used to do for you, it'll start doing the opposite. And
we call those paradoxical effects of marijuana.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good word.
It becomes the opposite.
Paradoxical.
Instead of relaxed, you become anxious. And I can tell you that doesn't happen once in a while. That happens a lot. People who use marijuana regularly over a long period of time often become anxious. Not just, you always hear the stories about, I got paranoid a couple of times. This is different. It creates an anxiety disorder. And in fact, if you look in the DSM manual about disorders, anxiety-induced substance abuse disorder,
Yeah. So, and my body just couldn't handle drinking like it used to. My GI system was just taking a hit. I mean, I was like losing weight. I had no appetite whatsoever. I had to force feed myself. And I wasn't sleeping. And I think alcohol it wasn't doing anything for me anymore. It was making me feel more out of control, and dealing with the anxiety, all I wanted to feel was in control.
And marijuana was doing that for a while.
Yeah, I thought so. I didn't put two and two together that my anxiety was caused by the marijuana. So I was treating my anxiety with more marijuana, which was causing more anxiety. And so I would treat it with more marijuana until the day that I called Mary Kay at Pinnacle. Now,
at what point or how much marijuana were you doing? Because I think people would want to know that. Because when we've had people on here, they go, when I've been drinking, I was drinking a half a gallon a day, or I was drinking 3 gallons a week. And I think people would be interested to know, how much marijuana were you smoking?
Yeah, it was about an ounce a week at the end.
Which is quite a bit.
That's quite a bit. And I would say that's important, but maybe what's even more important is you were smoking every day.
Right. All day.
Every day, all day. And so that's the actual overall amount is important, but that regularity of just having all the chemicals that come with it, it's not just the THC, but everything else that comes with the weed and whatever strain you were smoking, that sort of thing, every single day, all day, your brain isn't getting a break.
Yeah, it was such a cycle that I was caught in. I couldn't, at the very tail end of it, when I was only sleeping for 2 hours, I would wake up and go sit in my kitchen, and I distinctly remember the only time I felt relief was when I would exhale. After I would take a hit and then I would exhale, was the only time that I didn't feel the anxiety. And then right after, it was like a wave was washing over me, where I just I didn't know what to do.
Where was your boyfriend during all this?
He was trying his best to. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to approach it, because I was in such a state of panic all of the time, because I was just trying to make sense of where this anxiety was coming from. Why couldn't I go to the grocery store anymore without freaking out? Why were my hands sweating all of the time? Like, why am I losing weight? Why can't I eat properly?
When this was all going down, at any point did you think about contacting a therapist or a doctor or kind of?
But I think there was a lot of fear around that too, because I didn't know what they were going to say. Like, if it was going to be like a 5150 type of
I think a lot of people do. So 5150 is being admitted to the hospital against your will, right? They can pink slip you for 72 hours and determine if you're safe, And so I think a lot of people who are in those states become so anxious that they are also paranoid. Would you say you had some paranoia?
Definitely had paranoia.
And that will usually stop a person, because then your worst fears seem very real. Like, they're going to lock me up, or I'm going to go to jail. This is an illegal substance, the way, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I remember spending a weekend up at my parents' just in panic, and they didn't know what to do, and sharing with my mom that I'm scared of my own thoughts. I was having some serious suicidal ideations that had never been as real and loud as they were at the tail end of my use. Like, it was to the point where I asked my boyfriend to get the guns out of the house because I didn't trust myself. Like, my body, I felt such discontent that I couldn't fathom living another day in the state I was in.
And that is such a good description of when you realize your own thoughts, your own mind seems foreign, like it's working against you. You feel scared of your own mental processes, which we usually feel like, hey, that's who I am. but if it can feel like your brain turns on you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How about with this amount of regular smoking, all the anxiety, the suicidal thinking, would you also say that you lost touch with reality at times, like hallucinating?
Definitely. I recall like hearing things, not feeling like in my own body. It felt like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It was like on the verge of psychosis. I couldn't.
I mean, if you were hearing things, it probably was psychosis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And psychosis means we're having, hallucinations. So hearing, seeing, smelling, feeling things that aren't really there. Delusions are, inaccurate thoughts. So it sounds like you were having some of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times people who don't know much about mental health, they think, someone with schizophrenia, that's kind of scary. It must be sort of a genetic thing. And it's like, well, that's scary for that person. They're generally not dangerous to anyone. And it would be very tough to have psychosis. But more people are treated for, we'll call it self-induced psychosis through substance abuse than are treated for schizophrenia. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, more people cause their own psychosis through drug use than people who just inherit it naturally. And so, there is, again, a diagnosis for that, which is substance-induced psychosis.
Yeah.
And so that is, you were at a pretty fragile place neurologically. You were having all of the neurological breakdown symptoms that one could have, but it wasn't from meth. It wasn't from opiates. It was from marijuana, the drug that everyone nowadays likes to say is the cure for everything.
Right.
Don't panic. It's organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it rhymes, it's okay.
That's what the hippies say. Yeah. But you spend a week with your parents up in Park City. Mm-hmm. You're telling your mom you're scared. You don't know what to do. You've instructed your boyfriend to get all the guns out of the house. Mm-hmm. You're at a tipping point, a breaking point.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
So my mom was like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. Like, you need to decide, do you want to go to uni? Is that going to help you? And, I told her, I'm like, there's nothing they can do. It's not a detox. Like, you can't just detox from marijuana in the same way that you can detox from other substances, where you go into a facility and they
put you on Librium, Ativan. And that's what they did when I went into uni. And then they put you
back out, right?
Yeah.
It's like there was something deeper going on, I felt. I felt like I was losing my mind, and it was just terrifying. And so I went back to my house. My boyfriend was kind of in the same boat of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't have any answers for you. And I think that's really what I was doing, was I was searching for an answer to why, like, what was causing these feelings. And the morning that I went to Pinnacle, I just woke up and it was like something in me was like, it's either you do something about it or we're done here. And I decided to do something about it. So I got on the internet. My mom found Pinnacle. I gave Mary Kay a call. She's an angel, and she got me in the same day. And I started my journey to recovery, in recovery.
And you joined Pinnacle during the height of COVID.
Yeah. The day I went in was November 30th, 2020.
Yeah, that was for sure. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to just take a little side canyon here for a second and make a plug for Uni, which is now Huntsman Mental Health Institute, that you can go there and they will help you kind of find where you need to be.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people get a little afraid of a psychiatric facility, like, they're going to keep me, it's going to be against my will.
Yeah.
But they do have a great receiving center there where people can come in any state, suicidal, or if they're struggling with substance abuse or mental health issues. You had all three. Mm-hmm. And they can sit and talk with a person, help them understand where they need to go.
Yeah.
So they may say, hey, actually, this isn't the best place for you. This other place might be the best for you.
And that's actually how I found Pinnacle, because that's the recovery center I went to. I went there for a detox off of alcohol, and it was Ativan and Librium, and somebody from Pinnacle came over and talked to me. But in my head as a parent, and, when you're sitting there with your parents and your boyfriend, they don't know what to do. Uni or Huntsman Mental Health Institute.
HMHI.
is the safest place.
It's a great place, and I would say even a trip to the emergency room, calling 911. Nowadays, we have the new 988 number, which is kind of like 911 emergencies for mental health. And here in Salt Lake, through the University Healthcare, we have 801-587-3000, which is a 24-hour crisis line. And again, there are a lot of this is such a crisis, starting with the opiate crisis in the 90s. It's taken 30 years, but now we finally do have some options for people, because I think when you're in that state, you're like, well, what do I need help for?
Yeah,
is it the marijuana?
Right.
Is it the suicidal thoughts? Is it the like, I don't know. And so fortunately there are a variety of things, but I know that I'm a fan of Pinnacle now because of you, but mostly because I know they saved my friend Casey.
Yeah.
I need to ask about how you received at the house, because I remember when I was in the house and I went to my first meeting. I've said this on the podcast before. I mean, I was in there with people who were on meth, heroin, opioids, and all this other stuff. And I thought, I'm not supposed to be here because I'm here for Bud Light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't belong with you guys, because I mean, that's really how my head was thinking. I'm here for Bud Light.
Yeah.
You know, and I can imagine, you're sitting in those process groups and you're like, and they're like, well, what's your DOC? And you're like, marijuana.
Right. There's so much stigma in the recovery community.
That's crazy, right?
Around that.
I was going to say, did they give you a hard time? Like, oh, come on.
Like, you shouldn't even be here.
I did get that a couple times from some of the other clients. Not the ones that I ended up like finishing out with, but some of them that came in and then left. It was like, oh, that's it? That was the attitude. Was like, that's it? And it's like, yeah, that's it. But we both ended up in the same spot, so it doesn't really matter what brought us to the breaking point. It's the fact that we all ended up in the same space wanting to get better.
You don't need any more validation, but just to validate what you're saying, there is more and more research coming out. I've read several articles just published this year about psychosis and marijuana, and how anybody who might be predisposed to any mental health issue, anxiety, depression, anything like that, if you are regularly smoking marijuana, you're putting yourself at such a high risk for not just exacerbating your own mental health issue, like getting more depressed or getting more anxious, but actually creating psychosis, which would be one of the worst experiences I think a person could have.
Yeah.
So
scary.
When people, that's just ignorance, understandably, because people for decades have said it's okay for you, and now we have
it's medicinal.
It's medicinal,
and I'm
now
not going to argue the benefits of it medicinally.
There may be, but I'll be honest with you. The more and more that it's out there, I think the less awesome people are realizing. At least people in the healthcare are realizing, it doesn't really do everything that you think it's going to do for you, and so. It may help with some things, and so if you're a listener who's using it and it's helping you, that's fine. I hope you're doing it the right way. But just understand, it is not without risk.
Right.
It is a drug. It's a drug like any other that can put you in one of the worst situations of your life.
So what was your turning point in Pinnacle that made you think that, okay, I'm starting to figure this out?
Yeah. So I think just working with Eddie and the rest of the clinical staff there, and coming to an understanding that the life that I was living before was not the best that it was ever going to be. Because I think I really got stuck in that mentality after I got my DUI, and I was just using, and I was making good money and I could support myself, that this is as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get any better. And so going into a treatment center, talking to a lot of the staff there, and some of the people that have been in recovery themselves, and recognizing that as long as I'm willing to put the work in, I can make a life for myself, even tenfold what I previously thought was the best it was going to get,
Yeah, I think that's your depression talking, right? You were probably like, well, I'm supporting myself and I'm making good money, and I guess this is it. This is adult life. I'm in my 20s, I guess is what it's going to be like. And that's sort of negative, pessimistic, even if it didn't feel overly pessimistic, it's certainly self-limiting. And depression is very self-limiting. We kind of think, oh, I guess it can't get any better.
Right.
Can I ask you about the 12-step rooms? Because you like to use the 12-step, but you're not really an alcoholic. You're marijuana.
Right. So that was a whole come to Jesus moment, I guess, for me, was finding my sponsor and working through the first couple of chapters and having those questions of, I don't know if I belong in this, because I wouldn't classify myself as a textbook alcoholic. But we were going through it, and she was like, well, did you experience using one substance and trying to substitute it for another? It's like, check. Okay, well, did you start making compromises with yourself about how you were going to use at what times? Check. And it's like I checked all the boxes for what it says in the big book as what would be defined as an alcoholic. And it might be a different substance, but it's still all of the same symptoms of this disease. And so that's just like where I stand in my truth. And, I still do get the kind of like the side eyes from people when I share that my DOC is marijuana, and that's what broke me. That's what sent me to treatment. And, I almost lost my mind. Like I was 3 days away from, my therapist told me in Pinnacle, he said, if by day 3 you haven't calmed down, I need to refer you to a higher level of care where they can go and sedate you, because I don't know what to do. We don't have
a more
the resources.
medical intervention because your body was breaking down.
Yeah.
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 So now, how long do you have under your sobriety belt?
I have, as of yesterday, I checked today, I have 21 months.
Congratulations.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Very good.
Thank
That's
you.
excellent.
Yeah.
So what does life look like for you now?
Oh, life is a trip sober. It's amazing. It's like all the things.
I'll co-sign that all day long.
It's incredible.
It's a trip. It's amazing. It's wonderful.
Yes. It's all the things that I never thought.
It would be.
Possible. Like I
like,
find.
will you guys have fun being sober?
Yeah. I have so much fun sober. Like I'll go out with my sober friends and we're like, people must look at us and think that we are wasted, because we're just like laughing and having the best time and just being goofy, and
you're feeling real joy.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to say that it's like that all the time. I've definitely had
ups and downs, some serious ups and downs, like the long-term relationship ending was a down, but working through, having the skills to now manage those hardships where before I got sober, they would just decimate me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I remember I had an issue with my motor on my window. This is before I got sober, and it kept on collapsing on itself, and I thought the world was going to end because of that. I didn't know what I was going to do. Car troubles were too much. Yeah. And I was having lunch with my mom, and she just looked at me. She was like, I'm not dealing with this. Like, you go figure it out. And now it's like, I have stuff like that come up all the time, and it's just,
So the difference, I think, is when a person is in their substance abuse, they're fragile.
Yeah.
They're mentally and emotionally fragile. They're physically fragile. When you are in recovery, you're resilient. And I think that's what you're describing. Like, you look resilient, you sound resilient, you can handle the curveballs, because life still gets hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
But now you've got, like you said, the skills, the tools to handle it. And that resilience makes a person optimistic. Like, hey, I can do even more.
Yeah.
I think not only is she optimistic, she radiates joy. I mean, you look at her and you really do radiate. I mean,
absolutely.
It's that smile. You just go, it's infectious. I go, it's like when Harry met Sally. I want what she's having.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
but does that make sense?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I want
like,
some too.
Yeah. I mean, because you just seem so happy. And it's such a joy to have you. And I'm glad life is doing wonderful for you, because you deserve all the happiness.
Share with us, for the listeners, just it doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but what's something you rely on pretty regularly, daily or regularly, that just helps you maintain this
I know this.
glow?
I'm going to knock this answer out of the park, because it's at like 100% FTR. Fit to Recover has given me so much, and my sobriety. It's where I met all of my friends. It's where I make most of my connections. It's where I find opportunities of service. You know, it's the community there is unlike anything else.
And if you don't know what FTR is, it's Fit to Recover. We've
had him on the show.
Ian Acker. Yep. He's amazing. And not only do they have one in Salt Lake, they now have one in Utah County as well.
Yeah, Orem. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of our guests have came on the podcast through Fit to Recover. And when I was at Pinnacle, that was my first introduction to them. And we'd go there on Sunday, get a good workout, circle up.
I know exactly. Vicky's my girl.
So you found your community then?
Yeah. I feel like I've found purpose and a place where I can fit in, just to be myself. I can show up in any capacity. I could be on top of the moon, happy, smiling. I could also show up and be like, you know what, I just really need connection today, and I know I'm going to find it there, regardless of what class. Or
you did knock that answer out of the park, because finding community and purpose and having that support, I think, is 100% what people need to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're proud of you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story today. Dr. Matt, any takeaways?
Just, I want to be happy like Catlin is.
I do too.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for stopping by and listening to Project Recovery. In case you forgot, KSL Project Recovery is what?
I think you gave it away, but it's a KSL podcast. Yeah.
Addictable.
It's addictable, yeah.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.